Kafka Hibino, a middle-aged, ugly loser who lives in a world filled with Godzilla-like monsters called Kaijus who constantly invade cities all over Japan. Dreams to be one of the elite saviors of mankind who take down these monsters. But he is too weak, so instead he works as a sweeper whose job is to clean up the remains of a kaiju's corpse. When monsters like Godzilla, also known as kaiju, appear all over Japan, the nation goes into a state of emergency, calling all the citizens to run for their lives and head to the emergency evacuation center. One of these kaijus wreaks havoc in the city, causing people to wonder if it will be the end for them. On the other hand, the government issues a military unit immediately in order to take down these monstrous beasts. Learning the target location and its length of around 60 meters, which is as tall as a skyscraper, many armed military soldiers surround the kaiju from everywhere and fire missiles at it. It screams slightly in pain, as if it were just bitten by a mere mosquito. The elite force called the Defense Corps 3rd Division also joins in the party to combat this beast, and one of them, a female masked soldier, makes a flashy entrance, jumping from a helicopter while holding an assault rifle. Following her entry, many more GIs jump into the fight scene and attack the kaiju, diverting its attention towards them. In the meantime, their leader, the female soldier named Mina Ashiro, aims a specialized weapon made specifically to eliminate kaijus at the kaiju's heart and fires it, causing the kaiju to blow up in pieces, which also makes it clear that humans cannot be underestimated. After the battle, the sweeper team heads to the fight location to dispose of the remains of the monster, which are scattered everywhere around there. While the machines are getting ready to clean up the area, a middle-aged man named Kafka Hibino, who has been watching everything from a distance while enjoying a hamburger, reveals to be one of the workers as well who is supposed to clean the place. Kafka, who is part of a team of lazy losers known as the Sweepers, whose job it is to clean up the mess caused by kaijus, wonders when he will catch a break. They get to their work unenthusiastically, while on the other hand, the defense corps that has defeated the kaiju gets cheered on by the citizens for their successful defensive victory against the monster. Apparently, they have been working restlessly for the past couple of years to defeat these kaijus, and surprisingly, they have never failed or been injured. Kafka, who has always wanted to become a member of the 3rd Division of the Defense Corps, passes by them, doing his best to ignore the heroes, and goes back to work. Kafka states that his team's battle begins after the 3rd Division's battle ends and proudly claims that his team's work is far harder than the work that the 3rd Division does. Still, no one in the city has ever cared about them, and has never shown any appreciation towards them at all. He unwillingly cuts down the skin of the monster's corpse and begins slicing its meat. Suddenly, one of their members accidentally cuts a blood clot from the monster, causing the hot, burning blood to scatter all around him and burn his knees. So, Kafka quickly comes down to treat his colleagues' fresh wounds, having experienced such injuries. He blames the 3rd Division for always leaving a mess when they should focus on trying to find a much cleaner way to deal with the monsters. But since it cannot be helped with, Kafka continues doing his work, revealing that the government has strictly told the sweepers to get done with the cleaning process within a week, making their work a hellish job that will lead them to work all day and night in order to dispose of the monster's remains. One of the supervisors of the sweepers approaches Kafka and assigns him to deal with another area nearby, informing him that the sweepers are short-staffed there. However, that area is covered with kaiju's intestines, making Kafka's friends feel pity for him, as dealing with kaiju's intestines is the worst experience someone can ever have. So, when Kafka reaches the area, his body gives up, smelling the disgusting poop oozing out of the monster's intestines. But Kafka's will to get this job over with remains undeterred, so he quickly cuts everything down and returns home late at night, being done with his hellish job. Laying down in his bed after working so hard, Kafka turns on the TV to watch something wholesome, but fails to get over the disgusting smell that is still attached to his skin. He redirects his focus on the news about the 3rd Division and watches as the media glorifies the leader of that team, Captain Mina, who became in charge of that division at the young age of 27. Not only that, but she apparently has also slayed over 100 kaiju monsters already, making her one of the best elite fighters in their country. Kafka, who is overwhelmed by Mina's success, reveals that they were once very good friends when they were still kids. Back then, Kafka always wanted to be the one to eliminate Kaiju and encouraged Mina to join him on his mission. Mina, who was a literal crybaby back then, also became determined thanks to her friend's motivational words and achieved her goal of taking down those monsters who caused terror in her town. But unlike her, Kafka's dream failed, and now he has to work as a mere sweeper, whose job it is to clean up dead monsters' fresh poop. He wonders how things turned out to be this way and how he became such a loser. As midlife crisis begins to hit him hard, he calms himself down using the special coping mechanism, telling himself repeatedly that cleaning up the mess caused by Kaiju is also an important job in helping the people in his city. He consoles himself, stating that he has a nice room and can eat the foods that he likes. But he himself knows that isn't nearly enough to satisfy his hunger to do something good. In any case, he heads out to his workplace office of the sweepers the next day and meets with Ikikawa there, a part-time student who also wishes to work with them as a cleaner. Ikikawa apparently is only here for the experience of being around a kaiju because he wishes to join the defense corps one day. Hearing this, the higher-up of the sweepers named Tokuta laughs and tells Ikikawa that Kafka was also a daydreamer like him who wanted to join the defense corps. But that dream is now buried 12 feet under the ground. Ikikawa wishes to know why Kafka gave up on his dreams, and in response, Kafka tells him simply that his hard work and abilities weren't enough to become a member of the defense corps. So, he suggests that Ikikawa too stop wasting his time trying. However, Ikikawa gets offended by his advice and makes it clear that, unlike Kafka, he will never give up on his dream. Anyway, the cleaning job continues, and once again Kafka gets assigned to deal with the intestines, this time along with the new boy Ikikawa. Later, during lunch, Ikikawa loses his appetite completely, so Kafka gives him a vitamin drink and a pair of nose buds to feel better. This interaction leads them to bond with each other and enjoy working together more than before. After being done with the day's work, Ikikawa again approaches Kafka and thanks him for guiding him on his first day, admitting that if he weren't there to help, he wouldn't have been able to make it through the first day. He also lets Kafka know that Kafka's age limit to join the defense corps hasn't crossed yet, which means that Kafka can try to join the defense corps once again. Out of nowhere, a kaiju appears behind Ikikawa, opening its mouth to devour him. But thankfully, Kafka uses his quick reflexes to save the boy and drags him away from the monster, giving him a chance to escape. In the meantime, Kafka distracts the monster and runs away in the opposite direction from where Ikikawa ran off. He luckily finds a narrow entrance leading to a construction building, so he enters there and jumps off from the edge, knowing that the fall itself might end his life as well. At that moment, he remembers his time with Mina when she was crying over the fact that all of their friends' families, schools, and houses were destroyed by the Kaiju. He cheered up Mina, promising her that they would together take revenge on the Kaiju for what they did, and decided to join the defense corps to slay the Kaiju together. Back to the present, Kafka lands safe on the ground and still expresses his regrets over not being able to join the defense corps. He picks up a steel pipe to use as a weapon against the kaiju. However, he is nowhere strong enough to land a hit on the monster and gets himself badly injured with his right leg broken. As he gives up on his life, knowing he cannot escape, Ikikawa comes there to rescue him, telling him not to give up on his dreams. To save both the brave sweepers, a mysterious white tiger arrives there and takes care of the kaiju, eliminating it in the blink of an eye, which causes both Ikikawa and Kafka's jaws to drop completely. Mina appears before them, revealing herself to be the owner of the ferocious white tiger, but she doesn't even look at Kafka as if she is embarrassed by his presence and leaves immediately. After the battle, both Kafka and Ikikawa get admitted to a hospital to get their injuries treated. Kafka, who is in disbelief seeing how his childhood friend ignored his existence, doesn't judge her. Instead, he acknowledges her strength being so great that she was able to kill such a gigantic monster in an instant. Ikikawa grabs Kafka's attention and calls him a really amazing person for risking his own life to save others. And that is why he thinks that a person like Kafka should definitely join the defense corps. Kafka also realizes that he cannot just give up on his dreams just because he is slightly worse than the other candidates, and so he decides to give it another go at the entrance test again, thanking Ikikawa for motivating him to do so. At that moment, a small bird-sized kaiju appears in front of Kafka, and before he knows it, it reaches inside his body, turning him into a demonic Godzilla-shaped creature, or, as some would call it, a cheap rip-off of Overlord. Ikikawa, who watches the entire scene take place, becomes totally baffled by his senior's terrifying transformation, but he quickly realizes that, on the inside, he is the same guy as before. This sudden turn of events makes Kafka realize that if he doesn't run away for his life, the Defense Corps will soon find him and slay him. Hey guys, since you are already here enjoying the video, why don't you also hit the subscribe button for your old pal L here? If we hit 300,000 subscribers, maybe I will give away my specially baked cookie. That's it for this video. Kafka once again gets hit with a flashback involving Mina from their childhood days. Kafka was a big fan of anime and reading manga comics since the very beginning, which Mina thought was a complete waste of time. So, she made fun of him for his obsession with fictional stories and for thinking that he could be like one of the main characters of those mangas. But at the same time, she liked his silly behavior and his overprotectiveness and thanked him for always being beside her. Back to the present, Mina no longer has the same feelings inside her. She and her defense squad get informed about the sighting of a kaiju where the two sweepers, Kafka and Ikikawa, were hospitalized. So, she gets ready with her team to exterminate kaiju, knowing that if they don't act quickly, it will lead to unwanted casualties. Meanwhile, many social media pages, news channels, and emergency alarms also bring awareness of the kaiju sightings to the people of the town, prompting them to stay alarmed and safe in their homes. On the other hand, at the hospital, Kafka, who has turned into a kaiju, is doing a great job terrifying his fellow hospitalized old man. Ikikawa, being the only understanding person, tries to clear up the misunderstanding, telling the grandpa that Kafka is a human. Kafka also tries to show that a book shouldn't be judged by its cover and gives off a wholesome smile, which turns out to be so terrifying that it causes the old man to become unconscious. Kafka realizes that ugliness sometimes comes with its benefits as he discovers to have super strength in his current form. His accidental destruction of the hospital walls alarms the other patients, who immediately run off and call the Defense Corps to deal with miniature Godzilla. Ikikawa suggests that Kafka escape from there through the window to not get entangled with the Defense Corps and jumps off before him to give him the courage to also take the leap. Mina's team learns that the kaiju they are pursuing has fled from the hospital. So, they also change their route and rush in the direction where the kaiju ran off. Ikikawa, who can't believe his innocent senior has turned into a kaiju, questions how it can even be possible. While still running away from the sight of the public, Ikikawa turns around to see if Kafka is doing alright and finds out that Bro has mutated even more. It's as if he wasn't ugly enough already. He adds a disgusting attribute to himself as well and eats a bird alive using his parasitic tongue to grab it. After filling his appetite, Kafka reverts back to his original kaiju form when he realizes that more trouble is awaiting them. Ikikawa assumes that Kafka is about to be consumed by his inner demon. But Kafka explains that that is not the case and states that he has a sudden urge to pee. Not wanting to defame himself in public by peeing in the streets, Kafka wonders what he should do to protect his dignity. From what Ikikawa sees, he mentions that Kafka doesn't even have what is needed to do so, to which Kafka reveals that his kaiju version uses nipples to release things. At least men's nipples are finally functional now. Both Ikikawa and Kafka find this method of doing number one to be shocking, but they don't question it too much as they have other things to worry about. Ikikawa thinks that they should get going on their run, but Kafka expresses his desire to end his life, as he now knows no woman will ever think of marrying him because of what his nipples can do. It's mind-blowing that he thinks having piss nipples is the only roadblock to his marriage now after having turned into a monster. Anyway, Kafka figures that he can now join the defense corps now that he is super strong. But Ikikawa doesn't think that will ever happen because the defense corps is solely against creatures like Kafka, making Kafka realize that he will never be able to re-establish his friendship with Mina again. For now, he and Ikikawa decide to hide behind a locked facility, when suddenly, Kafka senses that something is moving underneath their feet. As he realizes that it's another kaiju that is coming from underground, it breaks out in the open just around the block. Mina gets informed about the second kaiju's sighting, but upon learning that it's in the same area where their first target is, she continues moving towards that location with her team. Although Kafka wishes to fight this new kaiju using his newfound power, Ikikawa stops him as he thinks it's the perfect chance for them to hide since the defense corps will be busy dealing with the kaiju. So, they go into hiding, which allows the monster to cause mass destruction in the area, leading to a little girl's entire family suffering an untimely death. The little girl desperately tries to free her mother from the rumble she is stuck in. Just as the monster comes there to feed on its prey, Kafka arrives there to save the day, and with a sucker punch, he launches the monster away from there. The little girl, who is initially scared by Kafka's appearance, quickly realizes that he isn't bad at all, so she seeks his help, asking him to save her dying mother. As they get busy rescuing the mother from under the rubble, it gives the monster enough time to get back there, telling Ikikawa to take both the mother and child to safety. Kafka gets filled with determination to teach the monster a lesson. He punches as hard as he can with all the energy in him and launches an uppercut with so much power that it causes the monster to burst into nothing but an infinite amount of blood, with every single one of them realizing that Kafka is stronger than the entire defense force. The only question that is left to answer is how Kafka is going to get into good terms with the defense force. The little girl thanks Kafka for saving both her and her mother's lives, which makes him remember the time when Mina was about her age. She also thanked him for always being beside her. They wandered around in the fields, acting like heroes, as they both wanted to become one. This memory makes Kafka realize that he needs to join the defense force to be able to stand by Mina's side once again, and that desire itself lets him revert back to his human form again. Soon after, when Mina arrives with her team at the place where the monster appeared, she learns that a third party has already dealt with it, leaving only blood stains scattered everywhere. Wondering who this mysterious hero might be, Mina questions the living witness, who is none other than the little girl. As she asks the girl about who did this, the little girl claims that she saw a regular man-sized kaiju who destroyed the monster with a single uppercut. The little girl begs Mina not to hurt the kaiju who fought for mankind, calling him a good kaiju, which makes Mina wonder how in the world a monster is supposed to be considered good by any sane person. In any case, her team makes a drawing of Kafka's kaiju based on the little girl's testimony and names it Kaiju No. 8, which explains why the anime goes by that name. Apparently, the defense force only gives codenames to kaijus who they deem to be the most dangerous, and including Kafka, only 8 kaijus have been named up until now. Hey guys, since you are already here enjoying the video, why don't you also hit the subscribe button for your old pal L here? Only a small percentage of people who watch my videos actually subscribe. If we hit 300,000 subscribers, maybe I will send one of you a box of my mom's specially baked cookies. Anyway, back to the video. 3 months have passed since the first sighting of Kaiju No. 8. Both Ikikawa and Kafka have started working as sweepers again, acting like nothing has happened at all. The sweepers there who have learned from the news that the Defense Corps has failed to locate Kaiju No. 8 for these past few months are baffled because the Defense Corps has never failed this badly doing their task before. With every single law enforcement agency out looking for the Kaiju No. 8, everything is still going okay because no one knows that Kafka is the Kaiju No. 8. Ikikawa reveals that both he and Kafka have taken the entrance exam of the Defense Corps, and it is the time of their result. As expected, Ikikawa passes the first round of the entrance exams, who excitedly rushes to Kafka's worksite, giving him the news that he too has passed the first round. Kafka, who was working alone in the cleanup site, reveals to be in his kaiju form, just chilling around having his lunch, and gets rightfully kicked in the stomach by Ikikawa for taking things too lightly, even though he is currently the most wanted man in their country. Realizing that he shouldn't expose his kaiju form recklessly, Kafka apologizes to Ikikawa and wipes up his demonic face. However, the demonic teeth still remain even on his human face, which gets him scolded even more, as he should have mastered his transformation in these 3 months. While screaming and shouting at Kafka, Ikikawa informs him that his kaiju form is on the news, which means that everything is now public information, and if only one person sees Kafka in his kaiju form, he will be in grave trouble. Now that he understands everything, Ikikawa explains how they didn't get suspected of being at the hospital. He reveals that after defeating the monster back then, both of them went straight back to the hospital, claiming to have run away just around the corner to be safe from Kaiju's attacks, which fortunately fooled everyone. And yes, the old man saw both of them back then, but his statements won't have any credibility because of his old age. So, moving on, Kafka gets his results, but he doesn't become too happy about them, even though it was his dream to pass these exams once, which surprises Ikikawa. Kafka explains that he has always passed in the first rounds, so he isn't excited by it at all, and proudly reveals that he only fails every time in the second round of the selection. But now that he is overpowered, he is confident that he will win the second round smoothly as well. However, Ikikawa doesn't think Kafka will be able to use his superpowers in the second round because many experienced Defense Corps officers will be monitoring all of the examinees strictly. Even so, Kafka wants to try and give it his all because it is indeed his last chance to catch up to his old friend Mina. So, with both of the sweepers' goal of passing the second round, they start considering themselves rivals and get ready for what's about to come soon. Kafka tries to open up a bottle, but because he is too weak, he transforms into his kaiju form and opens it, which instantly makes Ikikawa realize that this cheater is about to get into big trouble in the second round. Anyway, 10 days later, the Defense Force Selection Test's second round is held at the West Tokyo venue. The two sweepers, Ikikawa and Kafka, arrive at the test site and are amazed by how big the Defense Force's headquarters in West Tokyo is. They notice that many armed soldiers are everywhere in the area, prepared to take care of any troubles, which makes Kafka realize that if he accidentally transforms there, he will be sent to an isekai world before deleting his browsing history. Many more candidates arrive there, one pink-haired guy on his bike, a green-haired hobo on foot, and a blonde in his tracksuits, who all motivate Kafka to give it his all against these youngsters. A rich young brat with 2 ponytails also arrives there, revealing to have her own butler, which means she probably already has connections who will let her enter the Defense Corps. She tries to get Kafka's attention, referring to him as uncle, and tells him to move his trash truck as she wants to park her luxury car there. Kafka mentions that there are many open spots, but the rich brat makes it clear that she wants her car to be parked there because she feels like it. As she picks up a fight with Kafka, the old man, he gets furious and decides to teach her some manners. But she shows how strong she is by lifting up Kafka's truck with her bare hands and throwing it away, making it clear that she cannot be messed with. Proudly introducing herself as Kikuru Shinomiya, just after throwing away Kafka's company car, she comes close to Kafka, accusing him of smelling just like how a kaiju usually smells. To avoid any suspicions, Ikikawa steps in, telling Shinomiya that Kafka only smells like a kaiju because he is a sweeper whose day-to-day work is to dispose of kaiju corpses. Ikikawa also mentions that he himself is a sweeper, which makes Shinomiya question what these lowlifes with no social status think they are doing here taking part in the Defense Corps examination. Rather than giving her answer, Kafka goes back to his company truck, lifts it up using his bare hands, and parks it in an open spot, making it clear that he cannot be picked up on just because he is an old man who has no social status. Shinomiya, on the other hand, doesn't understand how a human has this much strength when he doesn't even own a private suit like her, which is why her strength was enhanced and increased 100 times more than usual. She realizes that she shouldn't mess with Kafka, so she instead directs her butler to park their car quickly before he can bring his mini truck back. Shinomiya, who had always thought that these entrance exams were just a formality with no competition whatsoever, finally thinks that things might take a turn to be interesting, telling Kafka that she will soon take her revenge for the humiliation she faced now. She takes her leave and heads to the test hall with her butler and her 2 personal bodyguards. Ikikawa, in the meantime, becomes furious at Kafka because he thinks that there is no need for Kafka to show off his hidden powers to Shinomiya. He has already told Kafka many times that he cannot use his powers recklessly, as if something figures out that something is fishy, he will die at the hands of the Defense Corps, or, worse, become a lab experiment for the government. Realizing that he shouldn't have shown her powers to Shinomiya, Kafka apologizes to Ikikawa and promises that he will be more careful next time. Anyway, they get going and head inside the Defense Corps Examination Center, both fully determined that they will pass the test at any cost. The second round of the entrance exam soon begins, involving many physical tests, which causes Kafka to struggle in his human form. Even though he has worked really hard these past couple of months, he is failing to keep up with others and, in the end, barely completing the stamina test. He learns from Ikikawa that their next part of the physicals will be the fitness and aptitude test. Because not everyone has the talent for being an aptitude, Ikikawa suggests that Kafka give it his all in the fitness test. So, accordingly, Kafka gives it his all in the fitness test using only his human strength, but soon realizes that he has grown too weak because of his age. Being left behind, Kafka considers using his powers, but because of Ikikawa's warnings, he doesn't do it, and as a result, gets ranked in 6th place, from the bottom of the ranks, that is. On the other hand, Shinomiya, who has made it to the top of the ranks, flexes her result paper by showing it to Kafka, tells him that he should really learn his place, and reminds him of his low social status. Being left with no self-respect or dignity, Kafka wonders what he should do. But because he doesn't want to make the test unfair for others by using his kaiju powers, he begs Ikikawa to give him his invaluable guidance. On the other hand, Mina gets the list of applicants for this year, and after finding Kafka's application, she stops for a moment, implying that perhaps she still has some feelings for the guy who she has ignored for all these years. She learns more about the candidates from her subordinate, and according to him, the first person this year that strikes the eye is Haruichi Izumo, who has graduated at the top of his class from the most reputed university in Tokyo. Looking to be the most promising candidate of this year, Izumo has been ranked in 2nd place in the fitness exam. Ikikawa, who is also in the middle of telling Kafka about the candidates, tells him about another promising candidate named Iharu Furuhashi, who is ranked 3rd in the fitness exam and is basically gifted with super strength. Next up is the biggest deal of this year, Aoi Kaguragi, who is a newcomer in the Self-Defense Force of Japan and has ranked 1st in the fitness exam. Although he was selected to become an elite in Japan's army force, he chose to come to the Defense Corps instead, as his goal is to defeat Kaijus. Just like these 3, there are many more promising applicants who are trying to become elite officers, and that is why it has made things difficult for a weak, nobody like Kafka to be able to attain a good rank in these exams. Ikikawa also mentions the youngest girl to have appeared as a candidate in this exam, the rich brat Shinomiya, who many people think of as the greatest talent ever to have existed, while the other top candidates are excitedly waiting to see how Shinomiya will perform. Kafka, on the other hand, only gets jealous of her. Not only that, he also gets belittled by her and beaten by her bodyguards in front of all the other candidates, who wonder what even is up with this old loser. Although being left humiliated by Shinomiya lowers Kafka's fighting spirit, he keeps his hopes high as the second part of their test is about disposing kaiju corpse, which is the sweeper's expertise. The 3rd Division of the Defense Corps Vice Captain Hoshina gathers all the candidates and begins the test, telling them to give it their best in the aptitude test. However, he surprisingly reveals that they will not be disposing of the kaiju corpses. Instead, they will be eliminated as living, breathing kaijus. Realizing that this is something not anyone can do, Kafka loses all hope of passing the second test. In any case, he and the other candidates wear their test gear, which is used by the Defense Corps. As everyone equips their combat suit, it not only enhances their strength physically, but also becomes connected with their body, making each and every neuron of their body more responsive than ever. With the best weapons to fight the Kaijus at their disposal, the candidates get ready for the battle. The operator takes a moment to tell everyone that their combat gear can unleash a specific amount of power in their body, and reveals that, like Ikikawa, the other top candidates have also become able to release almost 10–15% of their combat power. The operator also claims that the suit has only ever managed to unleash the suit's 20 powers in its first use. But when they learn that Shinomiya can unleash a staggering 46% of the suit's power, it becomes clear why she is known as the talent of the century. On the other hand, the talented middle-aged loser has failed to unleash any combat power, which makes the suit completely useless for combat. And that revelation also makes the test examiner burst out laughing, as he has never seen someone so talentless like him ever. Kafka tries to squeeze out his potential by bending his knees, but we all know what will happen if he continues to squeeze things in that position. Seeing Kafka trying to take a dump with his face all red, the test examiner Hoshina once again bursts out laughing, wondering what a comedian is doing in the Defense Force exam. Shinomiya, on the other hand, who has seen Kafka's super strength, gets annoyed at Kafka as she knows that he is deliberately hiding it from everyone. But anyway, with everyone going against Kafka's favor, the examiner Hoshina finally begins the final test. The instructor, Hoshina, takes all the participants to the field for the next stage of their competition. He tells them they will be fighting Hanju and 36 Yaju. They were the Kaijus that attacked the city some months ago, and they have been captured as test objects. They are risky and fearful, and as a result, a drone will be following all the participants to find out if they are terribly injured. If a participant is injured in such a way that he won't be able to continue, such participant will be given a shield and removed from the competition. However, it will also mean the participant has failed. Hoshina tips them all with the fact that that stage of the competition is the worst of it, and it is risky, so he won't advise any of them to participate, but if they want to, they should go. All the participants start the game, and they all watch as Kikaru rushes to climb the walls and kill the monsters. Within 2 seconds, she has successfully defeated Yaju 12 and Yaju 3. Ikikawa and Kafka watch her as she does all of these, and they wonder why they can't be as good as her. Kafka calls Ikikawa's attention, telling him they have to kill some of the Yajus too. On the other hand, Ikikawa also feels inspired to fight and claims that it is his line, and he has to kill enough of Yaju too. Unfortunately, they do not have any equipment to aid their shooting, and they aren't armed for combat. This makes them so annoyed, wondering how Kikaru can defeat so many Yaju while they can't do anything. As they wallow in this, they hear another announcement from Hoshina, who informs them that Mina Ashiro is also there to engage in the competition, and they should welcome her with their great works. Thinking of the history he has with her, Kafka doesn't want to lose it all. He asks Ikikawa if he knows the reason why the seniors have decided to use drones and stalk them. He feels if it is to know the number of Kaijus that each of them killed, they can do that by checking the sensors of their body. Hence, he thinks the reason is to find out how they are going to participate in the combat, the emotional intelligence of all the fighters, and how they make difficult decisions in face of danger. As a result, even if they don't have combat weapons to fight the Kaijus, they should aid the others who are more equipped for that purpose. Ikikawa thinks about his suggestions, and they leave to aid the others. They watch some of their colleagues trying to shoot a kaiju to no avail, and when Kafka looks well, he realizes he has once fought that kaiju before. He gets the key of how to defeat it, and he throws a grenade at the kaiju. He informs the others that the kaiju has very short sight but sharp hearing, so now that he has blocked his ears, he won't be able to hear the shots and they can defeat him. He also advises them that they should shoot the kaiju in the stomach because the stomach is the most delicate part of a kaiju, and they will defeat it that way. The boys take his advice, and they are shocked to realize he is right. They call him Kikaru's family, and he screams that he has his personality too. He continues with Ikikawa to find his next target. On his way, a Yaju captures him in his hands and throws him at the wall. He loses some ribs and some organs on the body while Ikaikawa calls out for him. Hoshina finds out on his sensors that he is almost dying, and they also see that the Yaju is going closer to him. Kafka recalls that if he gets weak and unable to continue or escape, he will be shielded from the competition, and that will also mean he has failed. He doesn't want to fail that competition, so he tries to struggle. Hashiro communicates to him that his organs are failing, and since they don't want any casualty, they will shield him out. Hashiro comments that he knows Kafka will be one of the first people to lose, and despite having a great personality and being funny, he is nothing but weak. Just as they are about to shield him, a gunshot from behind kills the Yaju. He is glad that someone has saved him from that embarrassing situation, but his helper is no one else but Kikaru. She tells him she has only saved him so he won't disturb her mission, and he should continue lying lifelessly on the floor like a coward that he is, while she goes ahead to kill all the kaijus around. She leaves and Hashiro informs Kafka that his spine has broken. His organs are failing and his legs are so weak that he can't walk from that place. He asks him if he wants to give up, but Kafka thinks about all he has lost to get to that place. At that point, his manpower is at 0, and there is no way he can survive. He screams and says he isn't giving up. He insists that the only person who can make him give up is himself, and he is tired of embarrassing himself in front of the person he wants to live and support. He admits that the only way he can be beside her is by standing strong and not giving up, and he has gone too far to stop now. Everyone wonders where his newfound strength is emitting from, as he declares that he has laid his life to get to that point, and even if it will take his life, he won't give up. His manpower moves to 0.1% as he struggles with his broken legs to stand up and continue the fight. He rises on his feet and decides he will continue the journey. He screams as they watch him in the situation room, and they are shocked he is standing because his legs are completely broken. Hashiro warns him that he has internal bleeding, and if he insists he wants to continue the competition, he can go on. But if he gets too weak to continue, they will activate his shield, which means he will lose. He insists that he will continue and tells Ikaikawa that he should proceed with the competition. To his shock, Ikaikawa stretches his hands to him and asks him to come. He recalls a situation where he was also weak, and Ikaikawa came through for him. He admits that Ikaikawa is a person for all situations and tells Ikaikawa that if they survive every other competition together, they can survive that one. He climbs on Ikaikawa so that Ikaikawa can be his legs and he can continue the journey. They watch them in the situation room, and they laugh. Hoshiro mocks that even if they aren't accepted into the team for their skills, they should be accepted for their comic relief because they are both a bit of a mess. They continue their competition, and the other players stare at them because they look like fools. Ikaikawa complains that their colleagues are looking at them, but Kafta encourages him that he doesn't have to care, and that as long as they complete the game, they are fine. He asks Ikaikawa to find Kikaru so they can support her. On the other hand, the players confront the last kaiju, and it is stronger than they had expected. The others try their best to defeat it, but their efforts aren't productive. As expected, Kikaru jumps into the scene and tells them they can't defeat her. She jumps at the kaiju, and she shoots at it. She tries to finish up the kaiju, but it is a little greater than her. Kafta urges Ikaikawa to carry him faster so they can get to Kikaru and ensure they help her defeat the kaiju. Ikaikawa is tired because Kafta is heavier than he had expected, but he finds it difficult to say this to Kafta. Kafta encourages him to use their shield power to support himself so they can get to Kikaru. As Ikaikawa runs faster, Kafta gets exhausted too. At the fight, Kikaru finds a loose part of the kaiju, and she raises the last attack. She successfully gives it a last shot and kills the last kaiju. She breathes a sigh of joy as she wins the battle for her team, and they proceed to the next stage of the competition. The situation in the situation room is shocking. Hoshina had expected that most of the contestants would lose at that point. He felt he would be able to send off at least 30 of the competitors, and at that point, none of them had been disqualified, and the worst that had happened to them all was injury. They all admitted that they had gotten the result they didn't expect. and they acknowledged that the only reason the competitors could survive to that extent was because of Kikoru. They all know Kikoru is the daughter of director Shinomiya, and they exclaim that they couldn't have expected the director's daughter to be mid. She looks like she would be a very great plus to the defense team because she is supportive and ensures her teammates are in good shape. At the field, she is satisfied with what she has done that day, and she looks at the sky, wondering if her father is proud of her and if he feels she is now doing as great as he thinks she will do. On the other hand, Ikikawa has eventually dripped kafta from his back. Since the first part of the game has ended, they hope for the best, and they anticipate the result to know if they will qualify for the next stage. Suddenly, Kikoru gets shot. It takes her a second to understand what is going on, and she concentrates her energy on that part of her injury so she can survive. Kafta speaks with Ikikawa about Kikoru, being one of the only times that they had encountered her. They admit that she is the beast they think she is. She is the strongest of the team, and she is supportive, a plus to any team they find themselves. If only they know the hero has been shot too. Kikoru concentrates her shield on her chest to survive. She wonders which kind of kaiju had shot her. The directors in the situation room are also too distracted. Kikoru heals her injury, and the kaiju speaks to her, asking her what is happening in her body. She is shocked to see a kaiju speak, and she admits that it is one of higher intelligence. After she heals herself, she tries to fight back. There is an emergency alarm in the situation room, and Hoshiro tries to find out what has happened. They find out there is an anomaly in the kaiju, and the dead ones are reviving with more than 6 points of intelligence. Those are highly intelligent kaiju that only himself and probably Ashiro can defeat. Ashiro commands him to ask all the students to use the nearest shelter and also try to evacuate the students while she goes to fight the kaiju. They announce to the students to leave, and they all start running, but Kikoru refuses. She insists she doesn't want to be a coward and make her father proud. She stands up, but the kaiju shoots her again and throws her to the wall. She remembers her childhood when one of her school results was released, and she was the first in the class. Other students who got lower results than her were encouraged by their parents, but her father wasn't even available to celebrate her. The butler tells her that her father will return that night, and she tells her father about her result. Instead of encouraging her, he asks her what she feels and if she thinks one success is enough for her. He says if he hypes her for one success, it will breed failure. He reminds her of her duty to the country and how she must make her late mother proud. For the sake of her mother, Shinomiya refuses to lose, and with the determination to win burning inside of her heart, she steps towards the monster with her gun. The monster smashes her away against the wall, but she gets up again, taking an oath to keep moving until she subdues the kaiju. With the wish and her father's command to become the strongest ever to be on a battlefield, Shinomiya continues to fight even though her hand has given up. As she unintentionally drops the gun from her hand, she realizes that the bones in her hand have broken into pieces, meaning that there is no way she can continue. Meanwhile, the examiners, who have been keeping a keen eye on Shinomiya, send aerial support to assist her, knowing that something's wrong, and as they get the visual of the kaiju, it baffles them as no other kaiju prior to this one has shown such amazing regenerative abilities. The lead analyst also notices that the kaiju is gathering energy inside its horn to release a massive attack on Shinomiya. So, she immediately informs both Mina and Hoshina, who rush to save her as she is the greatest talent in this century. Unfortunately, they did not reach there in time, causing Shinomiya to give up and bend on her knees, accepting her death by the kaiju. At death's door, she apologizes to her father for letting him down and for not being perfect enough. Kafka comes there just in time, telling Shinomiya to not give up just yet and rescuing her from being blasted away by the evolved kaiju. Speaking of which, he himself evolves into his kaiju form in order to fight the kaiju and, without any hesitation, shows her his true overpowered form. Meanwhile, the other candidates continue to fight the kaijus and begin evacuating the area, as all of the kaijus in that area keep on regenerating over and over. Ikikawa, on the other hand, hopes that Kafka isn't going to end up being taken down by the defense corps after they see them in his kaiju form. Ikikawa reveals that when he and Kafka were about to evacuate as well, Kafka heard from a senior that Shinomiya's life was in danger. So, without even discussing it with Ikikawa, Kafka unhesitantly rushed to that area to save her. Speaking of them, Shinomiya becomes speechless after learning that the old man she has been teasing all day is actually a kaiju. Kafka, in his terrifying form, surprisingly gets down on his knees and begs Shinomiya not to tell the defense corps that he can turn into a kaiju because they will definitely eliminate him if they learn the truth. The monster tries to interrupt their conversation by launching an energy blast on them, but Kafka simply sends the attack the other way by simply punching it away. Knowing that the monster isn't going to stop, Kafka gets up and tells Shinomiya that he will explain everything to her once he is done dealing with this monster. The lead analyst, who doesn't have visuals of Shinomiya's situation, detects that there is a strong surge of energy that is impossible for even a kaiju to generate, making her suspect that Kaiju number 8 has shown up there. She informs Hoshina about the readings, but he calls it a system glitch, as there is no chance that someone can generate so much energy. Kafka, in the meantime, turns on Super Saiyan mode, and with the most powerful packed punch, he reduces the kaiju to nothingness, leaving Shinomiya in awe as she herself did not succeed in even damaging it at all. Anyway, Kafka gets rid of all of the other nearby kaijus as well, and then recontinues his prior conversation with Shinomiya, begging her once again not to report him to the defense corps. He returns to his original human form and expresses how glad he is that Shinomiya is safe. Ikikawa comes there, banging his hand on Kafka's face for taking the risk of being exposed like that. While the two argue over nothing, Shinomiya faints because of the excess blood loss. Hoshina and Mina arrive at the location where they find the monsters to be reduced to nothingness, causing them to question who is behind the kaijus execution. But the investigation part is over, and their main priority is the examinee's safety. So, once they learn that Kafka and Ikikawa have brought Shinomiya safely back to the base, they are left relieved. Mina issues the investigation unit to find out who or what did this to the kaiju here, and, in the meantime, heads with Hoshina to the other locations to get rid of the kaijus who are still left alive. With the examination coming to an end, Kafka is sent to the Defense Corps hospital, even though he is not too injured. Ikikawa visits him and lets him know that Shinomiya is doing well as well and only needs to get her right arm fixed because it's completely broken down to the core. Mina, who reveals to have been eavesdropping on their conversation, musters up enough courage to visit Kafka, who is just as surprised as Ikikawa, not because she has ignored him her whole life, but because she is the top dog of the Defense Corps. Mina, who has heard that it was Kafka who had carried Shinomiya back to safety, thanks him for rescuing her, giving him a salute of honor. She says nothing else and takes her leave. But Kafka doesn't stop her, as he has taken the oath that he will only confront her after becoming a Defense Corps officer. On the other hand, Shinomiya, who has been suffering mentally for not being perfect enough, is visited by Hoshina, who comes to interrogate the situation as to who was responsible for subjugating the kaiju. However, she doesn't tell him the truth and claims that it was she who defeated kaiju. Soon after, it becomes public news that kaijus can now come back to life even after being reduced to nothing, which scares the general public. The intelligent kaiju, who perhaps was responsible for letting those kaijus attain such regenerative abilities, also hears the news but gets shocked upon learning that none of those mutated kaijus survived, which makes him wonder if the captains of the Defense Corps are that strong to be able to subdue them. Being left disappointed, the intelligent kaiju transforms his human form to blend in with the humans. But what's more surprising is that he is one of the new sweepers on Kafka's team, indicating that there will soon be a confrontation between the two transformers. How smart would it be if a kaiju joins a kaiju killing team? Well, let's ask Kafka if he's not too busy cutting up kaiju intestines again. The episode starts with Kafka and Ikikawa back at the kaiju cleaner's office. Kafka is panicking and going crazy with stress. He grabs Ikikawa and shakes him violently, blaming him for making him suffer like this. If it weren't for his encouragement, Kafka wouldn't have tried applying for the Defense Corps again. Ikikawa yells back that this wasn't what he was saying the other day. In fact, Kafka was even thanking him in the hospital for inspiring him to try and achieve his childhood dreams again. Ikikawa is getting annoyed that Kafka was so cool back then. Thankfully, they were put out of their misery when their boss arrives and informs them that the two of them just received some mail. Their exam results have finally arrived. The two hesitate upon opening and reading their results. For Kafka, this was his last shot. Would he be able to keep his promise with Mina and join her, or would he fail once again? He slowly pulls out his results and his eyes widen upon reading it. A few days later, all the newly passed members of the Defense Corps are gathered in the headquarters for their induction ceremony. Izumo congratulates Aoi for passing the exam, although it wasn't really a surprise that they both got in. Looking around, all the big names and famous people passed. Sadly, Izumo notices that Kafka is missing. Shinomiya arrives and others immediately congratulate her for passing first in their class. Izumo remarks how before the exam, he was expecting to finish top in their group, but upon seeing Shinomiya in action, he accepts defeat. It looks like he and Aoi would have to compete for top 2 instead. Aoi replies that he scored highest on the fitness exam, so he is still not giving up on his dream. He will aim for rank 1. On the other side of the room, Aiharu accidentally bumps into Ikikawa. The two introduce themselves and shake hands. Aiharu recalls Ikikawa being with Kafka during the exam, and he tries asking if he failed. Unfortunately, before Ikikawa can reply, their induction ceremony suddenly starts. Everyone snaps into attention as the captain, Mina Ashiro, enters the room. Everyone looks in awe at her as she heads to the stage. Shinomiya is also called onto the stage to act as the representative of the incoming class. Mina hands over their papers and announces that from this moment forward, the 27 recruits are now officers of the Defense Corps. Shinomiya promises that they will give their life for their mission and salutes Captain Mina. Before dismissing her, Mina addresses Shinomiya and thanks her for her help during the incident in the exam. If not for her, someone could have died. Shinomiya was surprised at this, and she looked extremely guilty. She knows that she was not the one who defeated the kaiju. In fact, Kafka should be the one who was receiving these words. So where is he? Kafka not only saved her life, but even worried about her like she was a little girl. She was humiliated, and she still wants some answers about Kafka's kaiju form. She won't let Kafka just disappear back into the population. Thankfully, Shinomiya doesn't have to do anything drastic because someone just abruptly barged into the room. It was Kafka, looking nervous and apologizing for interrupting the ceremony. Shinomiya, Ikinoya, and others are surprised but glad to see him. In a flashback, it was shown that Kafka actually failed the exam. Not only did he score the lowest on the fitness exam, but he also got a 0 on his aptitude test. All the other captains during the meeting discussing the recruits agreed with these assessments and easily dismissed him. Mina was about to defend him, but Vice Captain Hoshina suddenly raises his hand and volunteers to take him. He acknowledges that Kafka's numbers are below average and he doesn't have the skills to be an officer. However, he noticed during the actual combat portion of the exam that Kafka not only identified the enemy kaiju's weak points, but also aided the overall effort in taking them down. He chose to help others instead of prioritizing his own kill count. Of course, Hoshina also liked that Kafka is funny as hell. Kafka is not a full officer, but Hoshina is willing to take him to his platoon as a cadet and give him more training. Back in the present, Mina explains to the others that Kafka is accepted only as a cadet, so he isn't joining them in the induction ceremony. Nevertheless, everyone is glad that Kafka passed because they saw his perseverance. Before the ceremony ends, Mina thanks everyone for deciding to join the defense force. She warns them that the kaijus are getting stronger, and now more strange events are happening. However, this is also the reason why she wants them on her team. She promises to lead them and act as their shield and spear. Upon hearing her speech, Kafka hardens his resolve and promises that he will stand next to her soon. Unfortunately, he said this part out loud. Everyone was stunned at his sudden proclamation. He even called the captain by her first name. On the stage, Mina scolds him for speaking out of turn and disrespecting a superior officer. As punishment, he is ordered to do 100 push-ups. Vice Captain Hoshina laughs at Kafka's hilarious antics. However, he did notice that his captain seemed to smile a little. Hoshina is glad to have Kafka on their team because they need something to liven up their spirits from time to time. Of course, Hoshina also has another reason for wanting Kafka. During the exam when the Kaijus were coming back from the dead, they saw a 9-8 level Kaiju signal. Everyone thinks that a sensor must have broken, but Hoshina noticed that Kafka's vitals suddenly stopped at that same moment. Thus, he is going to keep Kafka close and find out what strange thing is up with him. Meanwhile, Kafka finally finishes his push-ups amidst the cheers and applause of the other officers. Shinomiya invites him outside for a bit, and the others start teasing and asking if she's going to confess. However, Ikukaya tries to signal to Kafka that Shinomiya might want to talk about their kaiju secret. A few hours later in a nearby restaurant, Shinomiya is shocked to learn that Kafka became a kaiju after eating one. Kafka wonders if he should just tell the Defense Corps and hope for a cure, but Shinomiya dashes his hopes away. She warns him that the Defense Corps would probably just experiment on him. This frightens Kafka, and he begs Shinomiya to keep their secret. Shinomiya finally relents, but she warns Kafka that if she ever sees Kafka become a threat to mankind, she herself will kill him. Kafka smiles and wholeheartedly agrees. The Defense Corps' newest recruits' training begins, and during this session, Ikikawa shows how skilled he is already when using guns as he shows his aim and precision by shooting down the target signs in the distance. He gets perfect scores for shooting down all of the target signs in an instant, which brings an end to his fire training exercise. After this test, the examiner gives the report that he has been able to unleash his Defense Corps suit's 18% combat power, which surprises everyone as that is quite a high score. Hoshina, who has been keeping an eye on the training from a distance, becomes impressed by Ikikawa, as he didn't anticipate that this boy would grow so much in such a short amount of time. As Ikikawa sets this highest score amongst all the newbies, Aiharu Furuhashi's turn comes up, who is naturally agitated because he must beat Ikikawa's score to prove that he is the strongest. He shoots down all of the targets with swift speed as well and finishes the test at a faster pace than Ikikawa, attaining the new high score. The report also states that he was able to unleash a total of 20% of the suit's combat power. This news brings Furuhashi's confidence back, so much that he goes on to tease Ikikawa for losing against him. Ikikawa, of course, doesn't satisfy him with a reply, since this is not a competition to begin with. While Furuhashi is busy taunting Ikikawa, Shinomiya, in the meantime, finishes her test in under a minute, setting new standards of her own and releasing an outstanding amount of 55% combat power from her suit. She mocks both Furuhashi and Ikikawa for fighting like a bunch of babies when their combined score is much lower than hers, as she makes everyone realize how mediocre they are in comparison to her. Aoi Kaguragi and Haruichi wonder how they will ever be able to top her. Speaking of getting top scores, our main man, Kafka Hibino, scores the bottom score and finishes the test in 7 minutes of time. Hey, at least he was able to release the suit power by 1%. Unlike last time, Kafka himself becomes overjoyed to learn that he was able to turn his 0% score into 1 and begins to tease Shinomiya, saying that he will soon overtake her. But his instructor, Hoshina, brings him back to reality and makes it clear to him that, at his current growth, he will never be able to become a full officer of the Defense Corps. With Kafka calmed down, Hoshina brings an end to the new recruits' fire training session and tells them that their overall training will end if they all take 10 laps around the perimeter. As some of them begin to complain because of the sudden task, Hoshina increases the lap round to 15 and sends them away. Hoshina's analyst, in the meantime, notices how many rivalries amongst the recruits have already grown and thinks that they themselves will make each other better by competing against each other consistently. After the end of the first training day, Kafka and Ikikawa go for a nice long bath together, where they complain about what a heartless man Hoshina is. Furuhashi yet again tries to pick up a fight with Ikikawa and comments on his flat biceps, telling him to build some muscle if he doesn't want to be called a woman. However, Ikikawa, who doesn't think that Furuhashi's muscles are any bigger than his, tells him not to make any stupid statements. Kafka, on the other hand, who has the biggest muscles in town, tries to show off his six-pack abs when accidentally it turns into family pack size, revealing that he was just controlling his breath to make himself look bulky. Furuhashi burst into laughter seeing Kafka's dad bod, which triggers Kafka's ego, prompting him to pick up a fight with the youngster. At that moment, Kaguragi enters the shower, revealing his Terminator body, which itself humiliates Kafka, Ikikawa, and Furuhashi, prompting them to hide their petty bodies underwater. At that moment, they all realize that flexing their muscles does not matter, and what only matters is their results in the defense corps. On the other side, Shinomiya enters the girls' restroom along with some other girls, where she comes across Captain Mina, who is casually having a drink. Just by her presence, Shinomiya becomes intimidated and apologizes to Mina for ruining her privacy. But Mina doesn't think much of it and tells the girls to come in, as she is just about to go outside anyway. Shinomiya, while heading inside, takes a look at Mina's body, which surprisingly doesn't have many muscles. So, it naturally makes her question how and why Mina is the strongest amongst all Defense Corps fighters. She asks Mina how she has so much combat power, and in response, Mina tells her to stand by her side, saying that she wants to demonstrate to her the basics of her training that have made her so strong. Meanwhile, the boys talk about why they joined the Defense Corps, and the first one to answer this question is Furuhashi, who proudly states that he only took this exam because of his crush on Captain Mina Ashiro. Apparently, when he was in middle school, he was attacked by a kaiju when Captain Mina appeared out of nowhere and saved his life. Since that day, he has wanted to be like her, and that is why he has joined the Defense Corps. The others state that they also have a similar story and claim that they too have come here because of Captain Mina. It's natural, though, since she is this generation's biggest superhero. But what's not natural is this loser Kafka claiming in front of everyone else that Mina is his childhood friend when she doesn't seem to give a single F about him in the present. The boys don't believe Kafka a single bit, so they first hear every single part of his childhood story, and find it rather surprising that he was this close to their beloved captain. As a matter of fact, the shock is too grave as they all end up being rendered unconscious lol. Anyway, from the next day on, the training commences again, and everyone's friendship builds up as well as their strength. Kafka, who is always left behind in the physical part, works twice as hard to catch up with his teammates and even stays up late at night studying to do well in the future. One night, the vice captain, Hoshina, who claims to have heard everything that Kafka has said about him being friends with Mina, questions him about it. He sees his determination to become the best of the best just so that he can stand beside Mina. So he gives him a heads up not to get too attached to his teammates, as many of them will end up losing their lives in the near future. At that very moment, the emergency bell rings, which wakes all of the new recruits up, making them realize that it is the calling for their very first mission. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Please consider subscribing. We are so close to hitting 300,000 subscribers, and as always, stay safe and take care. It was 3 a.m. and every officer was already ready and waiting in the Defense Forces operation room. Captain Mina asks a nearby officer for an update, and she learns that evacuation has already begun and is still ongoing. The epicenter of the kaiju signal is located in Sagamihara, and all civilians surrounding it are being evacuated by the military. Military trucks and civilian buses are being used to move all those people. The Japanese military has also established an artillery regiment command post in a nearby mall parking lot. The kaiju first appeared at Kanawa Fault and is traveling underground while still continuing to grow in size. It only appeared now because it has entered its breeding phase. In addition to the big kaiju, multiple little ones also sprung up in its vicinity. Mina decides that their best bet to defeat the enemy with minimum collateral damage is to stop it in Sector B of their map. She herself will handle the big one while Sector E will be a sniper base. From there, they would be able to target the enemies through the highway. She salutes everyone and bids them good luck. A few minutes later, all the stoplights are red with kaiju symbols, and the Defense Forces trucks are driving past them at breakneck speed to respond to Sagamihara. They've checked their weapons and Vice Captain Hoshina asks if everyone is ready. All the rookies look nervous while Shinomiya only stares at Kafka. She still couldn't believe the kaiju they call No. 8 is him, but she hopes he won't disappoint her. Meanwhile, Kafka is busy with his own problems. He was about to throw up due to overeating. Everyone immediately panics, and their truck is filled with shouts as Kafka controls his nausea. In another part of the city, all the evacuees are safely waiting in the mall while the anti-kaiju artillery takes position. At Sector E, Vice Captain Hoshina's platoon is waiting for the mission to start. His team includes Kafka and Shinomiya. Kafka stares upward at the towering kaiju they are about to face. It is so big that it's classified as a Hanju. Hoshina explains to everyone what their specific goals are. While the captain's team will handle the large kaiju, their group would deal and eliminate the smaller ones called Yaju. Their current area is deliberately clear of important buildings or important transportation routes, so they should prevent any Yaju from leaving the area. The other teams include Ikuruga's platoon in Sector F, which includes Ikikawa, and Nakanoshima's platoon in Sector J, which includes Izumo and Aoi. Their job is important because it would determine how much collateral damage the kaiju might cause. They have to prevent the destruction of more important buildings like schools, malls, and others. Of course, the platoons with rookies in them are in the rear sectors E, F, and J. This also means they are the last lines of defense. Hoshina then reminds everyone that no matter what their test scores were, that doesn't mean anything. What is important is the lives they save on the battlefield. Everyone cheers and hypes themselves up for the battle ahead. The JSDF reports to the defense force that they have finished their evacuation. The defense force relays to everyone the news and that Captain Mina will engage in 8 minutes. Ikikawa messages Kafka and asks him how he's feeling. Kafka replies that he has to show he can be an officer. During training, Hoshina warned Kafka that he might get fired in 3 months. He is feeling nervous and panicked now, but he also feels excited. Ikikawa smiles and assures Kafka that their first mission will be a big success. Their headquarters then announces that Yaju has been spotted in Sector E. The crab mushroom hybrid monsters are crawling all over the streets. Kafka bids goodbye to Ikikawa and dons his mask. Shinomiya and the others jump off the buildings while Kafka carefully climbs down. In the air above, a helicopter opens up and Mina readies herself for battle. She had reached the sniper point. Their headquarters instructs the JSDF to fire their artillery and push the large kaiju into Sector B. The artillery starts their barrage, and even their helicopters start firing their missiles, feeling their explosive impact. The kaiju slowly walks away and towards Sector B. From the rooftops, Hoshina is watching the whole operation and wishes his juniors to do a good job. Kafka, Shinomiya, and the other members of their platoon are waiting for the Yaju to reach their position. Kafka can tell that the suit is already helping him feel calm. He steps forward, readies his stance, and unleashes the suit's combat power. In the blink of an eye, he was quickly tossed away as a Yaju ran into him. Shinomiya scolds him and reminds him that his combat power is still 1%. Meanwhile, another member of their platoon is getting annoyed that they have to babysit the rookies. He tells Shinomiya if they can just play it safe and watch. They still don't know the enemy's weak points, so they should let the veterans handle it. A gun blast suddenly slices past the officer and blasts a nearby Yaju, causing it to explode. The officer was shocked, but Shinomiya just calmly accepts his orders and replies that she will play it safe and blast at the enemy weak points. She lands into the side of a wall and rains fire down on the Yaju, killing a group of them instantly. The officer couldn't believe his eyes. Shinomiya's firepower is not at the level of a rookie. Meanwhile, Kafka gives Shinomiya a thumbs up from under a pile of garbage he landed in. In Sector F, the other platoons are also battling with the Yajas. Furuhashi manages to kill several while sliding down a building. He was about to boast to Ikikawa, but his eyes widened when he witnessed Ikikawa killing an extra large one. Ikikawa explains that he had swapped his bullets from burst rounds to freeze rounds, slowing them down. However, he's still not satisfied. He needs to get better so Kafka doesn't have to transform anymore. In Sector J, Aoi and Izumo are fighting their own group of enemies by a trainway. The other officers are amazed and confused why this year's recruits are so awesome. They point it out to their platoon leader, Nakanushima, and complain that they are losing their self-confidence. Aoi and Izumo are just competing with each other to see who gets the most kills. The platoon leader, Nakanushima, notices how skilled the recruits this year are. She realizes that Kaguragi is like a wild child who likes to make a mess, whereas Haruichi is the clean type who finishes the kanjis with pure precision. As she sees them acting so skillfully, it triggers her cougar mode, prompting her to salivate like a total creep. Nakanoshima was already informed by Vice Captain Hoshina about these promising rookies, who have shockingly unleashed a tremendous amount of combat power already from their combat suits. She also notices that the top rookies are motivating the other rookies to improve, and that's why she thinks the current year's recruits will soon reach the top, taking over the veteran ones. Meanwhile, the observation team leader, Akinogi, verifies that the sector named Juliet no longer has any Kaijus around, so she tells Ishikawa's platoon to advance to the next sector. Kafka learns the news and becomes amazed to learn that both Ikikawa and Furuhashi have been fighting on the front lines and are the main contributors to all of the kaiju subjugation. As Kafka realizes that everyone else except for him is working as little as possible, it makes him desperate to find a way to help them. Since he is a total weakling in his human form, he is good for nothing and is forced to hide around the corner. So, he does what he is actually capable of, which is being a sweeper, and starts stabbing around a dead Yaju's body. He fails to find the core of the Yaju where it should be and realizes that since this Yaju is a fungal-type kaiju, its core might be stored somewhere else. As he finds the core at the base of Yaju's neck, he immediately gives the report to the vice captain, Hoshina, informing him that these cores are hard and serve as Yaju's backbone. Kafka determines that these types of kanjis need to be hit from the sides to get the most effective outcome. He also discovers that it has reproductive organs, which are the white bumpy balls near their backside. Anyway, because these reproductive organs have more kanji stored inside them, Kafka tells Hoshina that if they don't destroy them, more Yaju might spawn. Hoshina thanks Kafka for his valuable information and then tells the observation team to share the latest information about this Yaju with all of the Defense Corps fighters. Akinogi accordingly shares all of the information regarding the reproductive organs with all of the Defense Corps officers and also includes information about the Yaju Corps. Kafka is now relieved that he was able to somehow help the Defense Force. Wanting to help more, he decides to neutralize all of the other corpses of the defeated Yajus. Although I don't think Kafka will be able to improve physically if he continues to work like a sweeper, Kafka thinks that he will certainly be able to be by Mina's side one day at this rate. Well, props to him for being high and delusional without even having any brownies. The Hanju, in the meantime, reaches the designated combat initiation point, so the defense force initiates an attack on it. They target its legs to immobilize it, while on the other hand, their captain, Mina Ashiro, prepares to deliver the final blow to it from a distance. She charges her mega weapon and locks the target on the Hanju. But before firing her shot, she takes a brief moment to look at Kafka and gets ready to show him that she is the best in this league. She unleashes a whooping 96% combat power from her shoot and then fires her shoot, instantly reducing half of Hanju's body to nothing. Kafka, who witnesses this phenomenal attack power coming from Mina, realizes that she is in a whole different league from everyone else, and that makes him question whether he will be able to reach a stage where he will be able to stand beside her. Mina gets ready to fire the second shot since the first shot wasn't able to fully destroy the Hanju's core, and as she does so, she successfully manages to take the life of the Hanju. However, she doesn't stop there and fires the third shot even though it is already dead, which shows that she just wants to show Kafka and the others how much firepower she has at her disposal. She doesn't stop there and yet again fires the fourth shot at the dead Hanju, making Kafka realize how incredible she really is. Hoshina approaches Kafka, asking him if he wants to quit his dream of being beside Mina as her vice captain now that he has seen how much strength she has. Kafka turns the table on Hoshina, asking him if he is worthy to stand beside her. Hoshina proudly states that his combat power is nowhere as good as Mina's when it's about taking care of opponents from a long distance, but he claims that he is actually the best when it comes to close combat and backs it up, demonstrating how skillfully he can chop down a kaiju without even moving a muscle. Hoshina's family has apparently been kaiju hunters for a long period of time, and that is why he is genetically gifted when using a sword against these monsters. Kafka finally understands why both Hoshina and Mina are known as the most powerful members of the Defense Force. So, without any further ado, Hoshina gets ready to do the actual job. reminding Kafka that the dead Hanju has many eggs inside of its gigantic body, which also needs to be exterminated before it can create countless Yajas. The yogis swarm out moments later, so all of the defense corps members get busy to do the cleanup job. The newest recruits also join in, even though they are very tired since this was their first mission. But they know that they have to put in their best efforts to be recognized as a defense corps officer by Hoshina. Speaking of Hoshina, he acknowledges how resilient these newest recruits are and especially makes comments on Shinomiya and Ikukawa, who have been performing their best in this mission. Furuhashi, on the other hand, who has been failing to keep up with Ikukawa, follows his lead to the next sector of the area when they come across a member of the sweeper team who is in the middle of investigating Yaju's corpse. That guy is, of course, none other than the kaiju, who can transform into a human, and he is clearly pissed because the secret of these Yajas having reproductive organs has been found. So, he decides to vent out his anger on the ones who have approached him at the wrong time, Ikukawa and Furuhashi. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching, and do subscribe, or I'll break up with you. Bye. On the other side, 3 members of the sweeper team are sightseeing from a distance. Using binoculars, they try to find their old mates, Kafka and Ikukawa, but still fail to locate them inside the destructive zone. Because they aren't able to see them even from up here, they wonder if Kafka and Ikukawa are doing okay since this is their first mission. One of the sweepers mentions that their new recruit is missing, but the others don't think much of it and assume that the guy must have locked himself in the bathroom, because that is what he does the most. But what they don't know is that the rookie they are looking down on is the biggest kaiju villain, and perhaps the mastermind behind the creation of kaijus. Who knows? No spoilers in chat. Speaking of the villain, he is still looking at the corpse like a creep, so Furuhashi steps up, not knowing he too is a kaiju, and tells him to run away since this place is very dangerous at the moment. However, instead of saying anything to Furuhashi, the guy points his finger at him, which mutates in the blink of an eye, making Ikukawa instantly realize that the guy is serious trouble. So, he instinctively tells Furuhashi to duck. But before Furuhashi can even react to the guy's attack, he gets shot by him. Fortunately, he doesn't get hit on his heart. So he lives for now, but starts bleeding heavily due to the kaiju man's attack. The kaiju man blames his new form for not being able to shoot properly, indicating that he hasn't adapted to his human body yet. Furuhashi begins to scream in pain, realizing that the bleeding isn't stopping, even though it should be neutralized because of the power of the defense corps suit. Ikukawa tries to calm him down, telling him to utilize the suit's power to stop the bleeding. While Furuhashi is busy regaining his composure, Ikukawa moves his focus towards this kaiju man, whom he realizes must be similar to what Kafka is. However, once the kaiju man returns to his true form, Ikukawa realizes that this humanoid isn't a human taking the form of a kaiju, but a kaiju taking the form of a human. Ikukawa relays the news to Furuhashi, informing him how dangerous their current opponent is, as he is the one who was responsible for taking down the best of the newest recruits, Shinomiya, the kaiju man, who explains that he was just about to return home, changes his mind and decides to take one of Ikukawa or Furuhashi as a specimen to conduct experiments on them since they are valuable defense force officers. Ikukawa realizes that he is as good as dead in this situation, so he immediately contacts his platoon leader, Ikuruga, informing him that he has encountered a mysterious humanoid kaiju. But unfortunately, his message doesn't reach Ikuruga because the kaiju man has messed with his communicator. The kaiju man proudly reveals that he has not only messed with Ikukawa's communicator, but has made it so that the entire surrounding area becomes completely undetectable from the outside world, meaning that no one will be able to interfere with his business. Apparently, it is a trick of his to stay hidden among humans, and according to him, it works well for hunting humans as well. In any case, the kaiju man points his finger towards Ikukawa again with the intent to knock him down. But Ikukawa skillfully dodges his attacks, well, until he fails to dodge anymore and is forced to fall down on his knees, struggling to even move. When Shinomiya told him about this kaiju man, she said that the kaiju man is able to use some kind of magic, which allows him to shoot from his fingers. So, that is why he is able to dodge the kaiju man's attack by anticipating his hand movements. This makes him confident enough to fight back and shoot at him with his ice bullets. While continuing to shoot at the kaiju man, Ikukawa tells Furuhashi to run away and inform the others about this humanoid. Although Furuhashi doesn't want to be protected by his comrade, when he realizes that he is just being a hindrance to Ikukawa, he runs away, leaving Ikukawa to die alone. Ikukawa knows that he stands no chance against this kaiju since Shinomiya, the best one out of them all, wasn't even able to graze him. Still, as a defense core fighter, he puts his life on the line and continues to fight just so he can buy Furuhashi enough time to get out of this area. Furuhashi, in the meantime, wonders why Ikukawa would save him and what even makes him think that he can fight against this unbeatable, overpowered kaiju lord. He starts to hate the fact that he is not able to do anything, even though he was originally supposed to be one of the top dogs of the newest recruits. After joining the defense corps, he has done nothing except train to become stronger in order to be able to be beside Captain Mina Ashiro. But still, he hasn't managed to improve as much as Ikukawa has, the guy who wasn't supposed to surpass him or any of the potential top officers. Speaking of Ikukawa, he continues to shoot at the kaiju man, who realizes that Ikukawa must know something about him since he doesn't look that shook to his core upon seeing this new species of humanoid kaiju. So, the kaiju man tries out new things and attacks Ikukawa using his 4 arms at once. This time, Ikukawa realizes that he won't be able to dodge anymore. But thankfully for him, the knucklehead, whom he told earlier to run away, has come back and saved him from being destroyed by taking the shot himself. Furuhashi realizes that he has always been a weakling who has needed to be saved by someone. For example, today by Ikukawa and in the past by Mina Ashiro. Being a Sigma male, he doesn't want to be saved by anyone else anymore, and he makes it clear to Ikukawa as well that only he gets to be the main character of this story. The kaiju man, in the meantime, continues to watch the drama of the 2 side characters, who both think that they are the main characters and gets free entertainment from them. Ikukawa continues to tell Furuhashi to run away, but the kaiju man doesn't think that will work, as he claims that he has made it so that no one in his confined space or domain can leave without his permission. So, with no option left, the 2 determined defense corps fighters get up to fight for their lives and attack the kaiju man together. As Furuhashi first lands a shot on him using his lightning bullets, the kaiju man realizes how bothersome he can be, so he decides to get rid of him first. However, he fails to land a hit, as Furuhashi has also figured out how to dodge his attacks. Ikukawa, in the meantime, manifests the power of anime and friendship inside of him, and with sheer willpower, he releases maximum power from his weapon, utilizing all of the powers from the suit, and attacks the kaiju man. However, the kaiju man summons a wall of corpses in the blink of an eye, and saves himself from being shot at. So, Ikukawa takes the L and is rendered unconscious by the kaiju man. On the other side, Vice Captain Hoshino learns from Ikukawa's platoon leader, Ikuruga, that both Ikukawa and Furuhashi have gone missing. Kafka and Shinomiya also learn of this news, which makes both of them realize that something has gone terribly wrong, and assuming the worst-case scenario, they predict that the kaiju man has made his appearance. Ikukawa begins to bleed everywhere because of the damage he took, but he doesn't give up on his life and again gets up. So, the kaiju man decides to wrap things up, neutralizes Furuhashi before he can interrupt him again, and starts to shoot Ikukawa from every single angle. After taking down Ikukawa, the kaiju man moves his focus towards Furuhashi, who has already given up. But before he can shoot him, the actual main character makes his grand entry there and gets ready to teach this ruthless monster a lesson for messing with his friends. As he punches the kaiju man in the face, it gets disconnected from his body. But the kaiju man doesn't die yet and is only sent flying away in the distance. Kafka, in the meantime, carries Ikukawa on his shoulders to bring him back to safety, that is, right in front of Furuhashi, who cannot believe that there is another humanoid kaiju. The kaiju man makes his return, having recognized Kafka as the kaiju number 8. Kafka, who had thought that he had eliminated kaiju man with that one-punch man shot, puts Ikukawa down to get things over with first. He tells Ikukawa to hang on to his life a little longer, promising him that he will save him. He then comes towards the kaiju man, who doesn't understand why another kaiju humanoid like him is getting in his way when they are both of the same kind. The kaiju man realizes that Kafka is incredibly strong, so he decides to use his corpse for his experiments and lands an attack on him just by staring at him. Then he mutates his entire body to take the shape of a giant mushroom tree, revealing that when he fought Furuhashi and Ikukawa earlier, he wasn't taking them seriously at all and was just playing with them for fun's sake. Kafka becomes completely enraged and turns into pure Godzilla mode as he channels his inner destructive powers. His body starts to glow, which allows him to move at super speed and have incredible strength. With this status boost, he closes his distance with the Kaiju Man before he can even know it and lands a punch on him, before the Kaiju Man can create another shield, just like when he did when Ikukawa attacked him. Kafka breaks it and continues to fire rapid punches at him, forcing him to get pushed back. As the Kaiju Man realizes that he cannot survive against the Kaiju number 8, he decides to retreat. However, Kafka doesn't let him go that easily and continues to punch right into his core. He channels all of his strengths inside of his fists and finally unleashes the finishing blow, sending him miles away into the distance. The Kaiju Man notices that his core has been left completely exposed because of Kafka's attack, but he fails to move at all. Kafka gets close to him to finish him, but very conveniently, the Defense Corps officers show up right at that moment and point all of their guns at Kafka, not knowing that he is a human. The soldiers report to their superiors about the sighting of the humanoid kaiju, which brings up the question of whether Kafka will be able to escape from this situation. Meanwhile, Shinomiya, who has been dealing with the kaijus, reveals her earlier conversation with Kafka when he told her his intention to go look for Ikukawa and Furuhashi. Kafka was apparently able to sense the Kaiju Man since he was of the same type as him, and that is why he immediately took off without taking any precautions about the fact that he could be spotted by the Defense Corps officers. Back to the present, Shinomiya learns that a humanoid kaiju has been spotted, which makes her realize that it must be Kafka. So, she rushes to go there before the situation can escalate even more and the mistaken officers can hurt him. The Kaiju Man regenerates his body and escapes with Kafka being unable to move because of the Defense Corps officers pointing their guns at him. With the Kaiju Man gone, Kafka also makes his escape and runs to a narrow alley to safely transform back into his human form. But unbeknownst to him, Hoshina has chased him there, and he informs all of his comrades that he has located Kaiju number 8. Before Kafka can even explain the situation, Hoshina brings out his purple katana, and Swiftly begins to attack him with the pure intent to kill. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. And as always, stay safe and take care. Bye. Vice Captain Hoshina glows with a violet aura as he stares at Kaiju No. 8. Kafka also has his fists up, ready to fight. However, he knows that he cannot use his fists against the vice captain because Hoshina would be vaporized if Kafka tries to punch him. All of a sudden, a fountain of blood erupts from his chest. Kafka looks up and sees Hoshina high in the air. Kafka realizes that he won't be able to survive against the captain if he holds back his power. Hoshina lands and pushes himself off a nearby street pole, launching himself into Kafka. Kafka quickly jumps away, dodging the crater Hoshina created upon attacking. Hoshina launches himself again after the fleeing Kafka and starts attacking with his knives. Kafka dodges everywhere, leaning his head back and forth inches away from getting decapitated. Hoshina's attacks are so quick that Kafka doesn't even have enough time to harden his body to protect himself. A few cuts and slashes get past Kafka's guard and wounds start appearing all over his body. Kafka realizes that although Hoshina may not be stronger than other humanoid kaiju, his overwhelming speed more than makes up for it. He was already amazed the first time he saw Shinomiya move during their training, but Hoshina is on a whole other level compared to them. Kafka jumps into a narrow alley in the hopes of shaking Hoshina off, but Hoshina just starts leaping between the walls after him. A few seconds later, Hoshina attacks again and Kafka's hand gets cut off. Not only that, his chest was sliced and his core is now exposed. Kafka lands on the wall and quickly regenerates, growing back his hand and his chest. It was the first time Kafka used his regeneration, and he noticed it uses a lot of stamina. He continues his escape while making sure he doesn't take any more dangerous hits. When Hoshina closes the gap between them again, Kafka meets Hoshina's blades with his own fists, deflecting their strikes. Hoshina's appraisal of the kaiju increases, and he guesses that his opponent must at least have a level 8 fortitude. That would classify it as a Daikeiju, one of the highest classification possible. However, Hoshina also discerns that something feels weird about their fight. But Hoshina's not one to get distracted. He jumps away again and prepares his blades. Kafka tries to catch his breath while Hoshina's blade reddens with power. He then slashes at Kafka despite the distance between them. But this time, Hoshina's knives emit two powerful slashes and slices through the air. Kafka could feel the barely visible slashes charging straight towards him, and he quickly jumps over to the side. The slashes cleave through his knee, removing his leg. But it's not over yet. Hoshina is already right in front of Kafka. Kafka realizes that the double slash earlier was just a decoy, and this is the real attack. Hoshina slices once more, this time directly at Kafka's chest where his core is. Kafka blocks, but the knife bites deep into his body. Hoshina is confident of his success, but his eyes widen. His blade was stopped by a toothy mouth which suddenly formed in Kafka's chest. Hoshina tries to pull the knife back, but the teeth don't budge. Blood dribbled down Kafka's mouth, but his plan worked. He knew that Hoshina would target his core when he saw it earlier, so he developed a countermeasure. Electricity then courses through his body as he readies a powerful punch. Hoshina realizes that he might be in danger, but Kafka targeted his punch at Hoshina's knife, forcing Hoshina to let go and breaking it off of him. Hoshina was blasted back by the shockwave of the attack, and he landed a few meters away. When he looked in front of him, Kafka was already gone. Hoshina slaps his head in regret that his prey got away. He calls Captain Mina, who just finished eliminating all the other small kaiju, and reports that Kaiju No. 8 got away. In one of the battlefields, Shinomiya is sitting on a kaiju corpse wondering if it's truly fine to put her trust in Kafka. Thankfully, her trust wasn't wasted when Kafka returned alive in his human form. She smiles widely as she starts to scold him, but she immediately catches Kafka when he stumbles in her arms. Kafka apologizes to her for failing to kill the humanoid kaiju, but Shinomiya just blushes and points out she'll kill it herself. Kafka tries to leave to go find the injured Ikikawa, but Shinomiya stops him. She points out that they should be fine since the Corps are using kaiju technology to heal them. She instead starts scolding Kafka for getting into a battle with the vice captain. Meanwhile, Mina sees Hoshina looking deep in thought. When she questions him about Kaiju No. 8, Hoshina tells her that he is probably a Daikeiju. He would be the first one since the last Daikeiju was Fukuoka 5 years ago. Thankfully, Kaiju No 8 still has no casualties despite his high threat level. In fact, Hoshina keeps thinking about why the kaiju attacked his weapon earlier instead of him. During their whole fight, Hoshina felt like he was fighting a human and not a monster. Mina advises him not to think too much about it since their mission is still to eliminate all the kaiju. A message from Ikaruga then arrives telling the two leaders that they were able to identify the kaiju that attacked Ikikawa and Furuhashi. It was the same one that appeared at their exam site. He also relay how they found the kaiju looking like a human. In another part of the city, the humanoid kaiju is back in his human form and walking away from the battlefield. A car stops behind him, and the driver tells him to get out of the way. The human kaiju then eats him and assumes his identity, driving his car away from the scene. From the radio, the Defense Corps announces that the latest humanoid kaiju has been designated as Kaiju No. 9. Meanwhile, Kaiju No. 9 wonders how he should kill Kaiju No. 8. A few hours later, Ikikawa wakes up in the hospital. Shinomiya and Kafka were waiting beside him. Ikikawa thanks Kafka for saving them, but Kafka's eyes widen in response. It turns out that Aiharu was in the same room, and he asks Ikikawa why he's thanking Kafka when it was Kaiju No. 8 who saved them. Shinomiya quickly makes something up and tells him that they're thanking Kafka for finding out about the kaiju reproductive organs. Aiharu starts wondering aloud why Kaiju No. 8 saved them. He starts praising Kaiju No. 8's strength, which makes Kafka blush. Aiharu asks him why he's blushing, forcing Shinomiya to hit Kafka from behind to make him stop. After getting discharged from the hospital, a party is held to celebrate both Furuhashi and Ikikawa's recovery. All of the Defense Corps rookies congratulate both of them on leaving the hospital, which puts both of them at surprise as they didn't expect such special treatment from their cheapskate comrades. Kafka mentions that this celebration party is held not only to celebrate Furuhashi and Ikikawa's recovery, but also to celebrate their first win in their debut mission. These guys were apparently waiting patiently all this time for Furuhashi and Ikukawa to return so that they could celebrate together on this joyous occasion. Now that everyone is gathered, Kafka calls for their meal when a team of 9 members come out of the curtains, revealing that they have been waiting patiently to surprise the group. The cooking team serves Kafka, and the group has Japanese as 6 Wagyu beef, which I didn't even know existed. Kafka and the others are also terrified to learn that there exists such expensive meat. But according to my quick research on Wagyu meat, it unfortunately does not exist. Anyway, the party was apparently organized by Haruichi Izumo, one of the top rookies, and that is why this cooking team is giving it their all to impress and satisfy their master. Haruichi comes up front with a slight concern on his face, recalling that he ordered the cheapest course and explaining that his entire family tree doesn't have that much money to pay for a 6 Wagyu beef. But the chef tells him not to worry, as he promises to only charge the standard price for the meal. Jokes aside, according to Shinomiya, Haruichi is apparently the only heir to Izumo Technologies, a big tech company in Japan, and that is why he can afford to buy such luxurious delicacies. Kafka asks Shinomiya what this dude's company even does, and Shinomiya explains that Izumo Technologies are the largest anti-kaiju arms manufacturers in the country, meaning that they are the guys who make the Defense Force suits. Shinomiya also tells Kafka that Haruichi has way more cash than her family. Because she was aware of his wealth, she conspired to waste some of his money for their celebration and basically manipulated him into treating them here, which means that technically it was Shinomiya who had arranged this party. Anyway, Hoshina joins them and calls for a toast to appreciate all of their hard work on their debut mission, telling them to get wasted and have fun together this joyous night. Accordingly, Kafka immediately chugs down an entire glass of beer. The girls, on the other hand, begin their own mukbang session. While every subgroup is having their own conversation, Ikukawa, who has been seated beside Hoshina, comments that he has never seen everyone so happy, so he thanks Hoshina for allowing the recruits to have this party and enjoy it. However, Hoshina, for some reason, gives off an evil smirk and warns Ikukawa beforehand, telling him that the real show is soon about to start. Ikukawa asks Hoshina what he is trying to say all of a sudden, but before he can get a reply, Shinomiya interrupts them, getting into a fight with Furuhashi. She calls him selfish and a big show-off for always trying to look good without having any top skills and shouts at him, telling him that he shouldn't make everything so personal. Furuhashi becomes infuriated by her statement and calls her out for having double standards because she herself tends to take anything and everything quite personally. She also reminds her of the time when she almost sacrificed her own life for her family's pride. On the other hand, Kaguragi, the guy who doesn't get any screen time, gets into a fight with Izumo, which confuses Ikukawa as he doesn't understand why they are arguing over nothing. Kafka joins in being completely drunk and asks Izumo for advice, as he hasn't been able to release much power. He thinks that his suit is defective, but Kaguragi doesn't think that is the case and spits the hardest fact on him, telling him that it is his fault for being the weakest loser here. As almost everyone begins to argue with each other, Ikukawa wonders what in the world is going on when he finally realizes that all of the groups are actually talking about their first mission and criticizing each other for their mistakes, which is good because in this way they will all be able to figure out where they are lacking. Kafka picks up a fight with Kaguragi, showcasing both of their strengths in an arm wrestling match, but he loses almost instantly. Similarly, the others also get into a fight and begin to beat each other up. This chaotic situation just shows what Hoshina meant when he said that the real show is about to happen soon. Hoshina begins to laugh at them, revealing that every year, the rookies tend to fight each other at their celebration parties, which makes this a yearly tradition. Meanwhile, Haruichi meets with Chef Dojima, who thanks him for collaborating with them after such a long time. Dojima asks Haruichi how his father is doing, but he doesn't satisfy the old man with an answer as he hasn't talked to his father in a long time. There is a reason behind it, but Haruichi hasn't disclosed it yet. Kaguragi overhears their conversation but doesn't put his nose in and quietly walks off to the restroom. Back at the party, Hoshina calms down everyone and announces that Kafka will be promoted to officer despite his weaknesses because he was able to save many lives with his insight about Kaijus eggs during their mission. Kafka gets officially welcomed to the team and is cheered for still having what is needed in his old age. The next day after the party, Kafka gets his official officer suit from Captain Mina Ashiro, who doesn't wait a moment to discourage him, telling him that with his talentless body, he won't be able to fight by her side even if he tried for a lifetime. But Kafka doesn't take her words negatively and is glad that she at least remembers that he wants to fight beside her. So, he casually tells Mina to wait for him, which gets him punished by her for not addressing her with proper respect. Before taking off, Mina tells Kafka to not disappoint Hoshina, revealing that it was Hoshina who saw potential in him and was the only person who recommended him to be a full officer in the Defense Corps. So, Kafka begins to study hard and stays late at night in his studies when he notices that someone is in the training room. As his curious mind tells him to head inside, he finds Hoshina sparring alone, mimicking his earlier fight with Kaiju No. 8. Hoshina stops upon seeing Kafka and explains that he is in the middle of devising a strategy to defeat Kaiju No. 8. Which terrifies Kafka as he doesn't want to be hurt anymore by this terrifying little man. Still, Kafka shows his respect to Hoshina and gives him a proper salute, as he knows that Hoshina is only training this late at night because he wants to protect the people of this country and his comrades from the unknown threats that are these new humanoid kaijus. Meanwhile, up in the sky, a mysterious crimson-colored kaiju is flying with his army of kaiju dragons, definitely on the way to bringing trouble for the Defense Corps. That's it for this video. Give us a like if you want the next part, and make sure to subscribe to our channel for more anime content. Thanks, bye! It is late at night at the Defense Forces base, but Vice Captain Hoshina is still awake in front of a laptop. He's intently studying everything they know about Kaiju No. 8. From the reports of his first sightings to his observed behavior. He compares it to the battle he had with a kaiju, and he couldn't help but conclude that Kaiju No. 8 feels strangely human. And then, there's a low Kaiju No. 9 who could speak and disguise itself as a human. Is something strange happening to the kaijus? At the same time, Kafka is at their barracks rooftops drinking beer. He's also going over the conversation he had with Hoshina and how Hoshina now expects much of him. He slaps himself awake and promises to not let the others down. Kafka is about to go to sleep when he notices something in the horizon. A bunch of meteors are directly falling and heading straight for him. Kafka shields his face from the intense heat of the meteors as they come crashing down all around him. The meteors hit the buildings and the streets in huge explosions. It was so intense that the other Defense Force members quickly got awakened from the fiery blasts. The whole base also shakes and Hoshina immediately acts when he feels the building shaking. He calls their headquarters, who quickly reports to him that dozens of kaiju had entered the base. It looks like they are being invaded from the air. In addition, most of the attacking kaiju have a fortitude higher than 6. Meaning they are all huge and powerful Hanju class. One Hanju that fell on a building releases a powerful breath blast that carves a path through the base, and afterward, the Hanju flies again into the sky. Hoshina dons his combat suit and contacts the others. Since Captain Mina is away, he'll have to take charge. He orders everyone to lure as many kaiju as they can towards the training area. They have to make sure none can get off the base and endanger civilians. The other officers gear up and rush towards the exit, while Hoshina ponders their situation. They haven't heard any damage reports from outside, so it might be possible that the target of the kaijus is the base itself. On the rooftop, Kafka gazes around their base and sees the numerous flying kaijus. Below him, buildings are in ruin and the whole base seemed to be in flames. The kaijus above also look like wyvern types, which are especially dangerous. He was about to join the others when he remembered something important about wyvern-type kaijus, so he tried to contact the vice captain. Hoshina is instructing his officers in the field to assemble with rifles so they can shoot down the kaijus. They are moving to formation when Kafka's call arrives. Kafka explains to Hoshina that they only see about a dozen or so wyvern-type kaiju each year, but every time they appear, there's always something in common. Wyvern-type kaijus are always alone. However, the ones attacking them now are clearly in a group. Hoshina immediately understood what Kafka was hinting at. There must be something out there that's so powerful it made the other wyverns swallow their pride and follow it. Not only that, this leader is intelligent with a goal in mind. Just as Hoshina is speaking, kaijus slowly appear in front of him. It was a humanoid kaiju with 2 wyverns flanking it. This new humanoid kaiju looks like it was covered in blood-red armor from head to toe and has a tail behind him. The blood-red kaiju then walks up to them and asks Hoshina if he's the most powerful human in the base. Hoshina realizes that this new kaiju can also speak, and he replies yes since the captain isn't at the base. The kaiju accepts his answer and tells Hoshina he will be his prey. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, analysis of this new enemy had just finished. Its fortitude is level 8-3, placing it in the Daikeiju class like Kaiju No. 8 and 9. Hoshina contacts platoon leader Ikuruga and puts him in command of fighting the other kaijus. They have to keep them in the base while keeping them away from civilians and their headquarters. He was about to continue giving orders when the blood-red kaiju slowly raised his arms. Hoshina's eyes widen, and he quickly dodges moments before the kaiju's attack hits the building behind them and destroys it. The kaiju praises Hoshina for dodging, and it suddenly appears behind Hoshina ready to strike. The kaiju punches at Hoshina, sending a huge shockwave that throws debris all over and explodes all nearby windows. However, Hoshina managed to dodge the attack and even save his nearby officers. The kaiju smiles and opens his head, revealing a single eye. It then screams loudly in the air, causing all the other wyverns to respond with cries of their own. This makes Hoshina conclude that the base truly is the target. His eyes widen once more, and he dodges the kaiju's sudden punch inches away from his face. The punch was so powerful that the ground exploded. Hoshina knows that if he gets hit once, he's over. He pulls out his blades and prepares for combat. The blood-red kaiju charges again, and the two duke it out, dodging and striking. Hoshina quickly realizes that the kaiju's skin is even tougher than No. 8's. Meanwhile, in another part of the base, Ikuruga is leading the officers in exterminating the kaijus. They shoot their rifles at the wyverns, but they don't seem to have any effects. The wyverns just counterattack with their own fire breaths. Ikuruga suddenly receives a call from Kafka, advising him not to attack from the front. Instead, they should target the kaijus from the back. Ikikawa and the other officers are relieved to hear from Kafka, so Kafka explains that he was late because he was talking to the vice captain. Kafka runs toward the fight while trying to give the others info about the kaijus. Wyvern types have thick skin on the front, and their core is near the back. Their backside also has thin armor because they need to be as light as possible to fly. Ikuruga thanks Kafka for the info and runs to the side of the kaiju. He instructs the others to split up, with some running in front as decoy while others hit the back. Haruichi and Kaguragi run toward one, with Kaguragi acting as decoy and Haruichi jumping from a pile of debris to get a clearer shot of its back. Haruichi was about to fire when another kaiju appeared and breathed fire on him. He dodges, but he also reports to the others that the kaijus seem to be working together. Everyone is thinking what they should do next when Shinomiya tells them that there might be another way. Shinomiya is running fast through the battlefield while the kaijus continue wreaking havoc in the area. The kaiju turns toward Shinomiya, but Shinomiya is already leaping into the kaiju. She swings her new weapon and breaks through the kaiju's armor, killing it in one hit. She lifts her new axe and tells the others that she just uses her unstoppable power to smash right through the front armor. A flashback shows how Shinomiya became so overpowered out of nowhere. Earlier at the underground weapons storage room, she was handed a custom-grade weapon made especially on the orders of Captain Mina Ashiro and Vice Captain Hoshina. Although traditionally only a captain of the Defense Corps crew gets to have such privileges, because of how talented Shinomiya is, she is being given this special treatment. But it's not only because of her potential. Mina explains, telling Shinomiya that because the numbers of kaijus appearing this year are at an abnormally large rate than before, this is the way of making sure that the Defense Corps officers are properly armed to deal with any surprise attacks. Since Shinomiya is statistically the third most powerful officer at their base, Captain Mina Ashiro has personally chosen her to be a part of their main offense team. Now that everything has been explained to Shinomiya, Mina opens up the special mechanism that has stored her custom-made weapon and reveals it to her. As she wields the weapon for the very first time, Mina tells her to go and annihilate the kaijus using this destructive battle axe. So, basically, that is how Mina now has such cool-looking custom-made gear that complements her spiky twin ponytails as well. Although the weapon is just a prototype, it still lives up to Shinomiya's expectations. as it is already overpowered as ever thanks to the power boost given by Shinomiya's suit. She mentions one thing that she doesn't like about her new weapon, and that is that it's such a manly and ugly weapon. She thinks that only Vikings are suitable to use such an ugly weapon, not a princess like her. But I don't think this tomboy princess is any less than a reckless Viking. Anyway, Shinomiya focuses again on the Hanjus and leaps towards one to take it down. As she is in midair, she releases all of her suit power inside the battle axe and generates a powerful shock wave that allows her to pierce through Hanju's indestructible front armor. After taking down one of the wyverns with a single blow, she focuses on the next one to her right and slashes right through its thick scales like a piece of cake. Another wyvern targets her from above, but before it can reach her, Ikikawa comes in to her support and uses his signature ice bullets to freeze the wyvern mid-air. It doesn't stay down though, so Ikikawa attacks it once again and begins immobilizing it slowly, which impresses Shinomiya as she didn't think loser Kafka's loser buddy would be this strong. With Ikikawa's support, Shinomiya slays the third wyvern by decapitating it, and she thanks Ikikawa for helping her. Kaguragi and Haruichi, on the other side, learn the news that a one-woman army was able to take down 3 wyverns on her own, which makes them instantly realize that the person is none other than Shinomiya. This makes them envious of her, as they are failing to keep up with her strength. So, Haruichi and Kaguragi team up, wanting to get some kills for themselves to raise their reputation, and decide to hit the enemies from behind whenever Shinomiya isn't paying attention. Meanwhile, Hoshina is still battling against the Crimson Daikeiju leader, who keeps pushing him behind. Beaten by speed, Hoshina is forced to fall back and dodge, and isn't able to counter once at all. Hoshina is able to sense and see the glaring laugh of the Daikeiju, which makes him realize that the Daikeiju is actually enjoying their fight. As he continues to fall back, he asks Okunogi to open their base's gate 3, wanting to exit from there. He wonders why this kaiju is laughing since traditionally kaijus aren't supposed to have any sort of emotion in them. The Daikeiju takes a moment to speak with his first formidable opponent, commending him for being such a strong human, as there aren't many kaijus who are as strong as him. The Daikaiju also states that he is not only excited because he is enjoying their fight, but also because he wants to eat Hoshina, revealing that consuming a strong human will make him even stronger. In any case, the Daikeiju continues to play with his prey and dashes right in front of Hoshina, landing a straight punch at him. Hoshina doesn't dodge the attack like other times and uses this opportunity to cut the right arm of the Daikaiju. Having taken the hit head-on, Hoshina realizes that he cannot allow this fight to continue any longer. So, he decides to go all out, emanating a purple aura around his body, and attacks the Daikaiju after releasing 92% of the suit's power. Meanwhile, Kafka transforms a part of his legs to speed up his momentum and saves a fellow officer from being attacked by a wyvern. Seeing him unleash such a tremendous speed, Officer Minace assumes that Kafka has learned to utilize the power of his suit, but that is not the case. So, he tries to make an excuse for her and doesn't realize that the wyvern is still behind them and ready to launch a second attack. Fortunately for them, Shinomiya comes to their rescue and slays the wyvern with one slash with her battle axe. Ikikawa also comes there to assist Shinomiya and assigns Kafka and Minace the task of rescuing the other injured officers. Ikikawa also subtly tells Kafka to be careful and reminds him that he has strong fellow officers, so he doesn't need to use his secret powers. Kafka sees the entire team working together against the wyvern, and that amazes him. The veteran officers who were off-duty also joined in to defend their base and began to push back the kaijus without needing to have their Captain Mina's support. This makes Kafka proud of all of his comrades, and he starts feeling grateful to have been chosen as a member of the 3rd Division of the Defense Corps. Hoshina declares bluntly that the humans will be winning this fight against the wyverns and, right after, starts attacking the Daikeiju. As he begins to slice him through everywhere and basically turns him into a cripple, the Daikeiju is forced to reveal his hidden abilities. He regenerates his entire body in a matter of seconds, which makes Hoshina realize that all of his efforts were in vain. Still, Hoshina doesn't give up and continues to turn the Daikaiju's limbs into sushi until he gets a glimpse of the Daikaiju's core. With the core exposed, Hoshina delivers his final move on the Daikeiju, targeting his core. But the Daikaiju doesn't die. Instead, it mutates into a titan-sized kaiju. revealing its true terrifying monstrous form. That's it for this video, guys. Make sure to give us a like if you want the next part, and smash that subscribe button for more anime content. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and take care. Bye bye.